So after Wind, for a while I just did generated stuff for ESLs, like people. There was a guy that I worked for that was like, he would hire me to come and direct something, either audio or actual like dramatic type stuff. But it wasn't until like 2000, around there, I was like starting to get paid to write scripts. And then this company here, a local company here called Aerostorm came, and their whole thing is they make these kind of low budget fantasy films and then sell them, then they can make their money back in foreign sales and stuff like that. So they came and they said, hey, we have this idea for a movie, would you be interested in directing it? And to be honest, I was kind of like, at that time I was kind of freaking out about whether or not I would ever make a feature. So that was like a huge, like, of course I'll make your feature, because I just need to cross that threshold, So it wasn't a genre that I was really excited about, it was kind of fantasy and like, I wanted to do things like Wind, where I just felt like it was like kind of an anti-war movie that, like had cool visuals, and it was VFX, but it like was actually about something very profound and deep to me. And, my first feature was a very fun, shoot 'em up with a guy with fighting orcs with a machine gun. Like, it was kind of like not what I would have chosen. And I debated for a long time about whether I should just take the job or, and I had a friend who was like, your first feature is your first feature for the rest of your life. Like, you gotta be careful. And ultimately I just decided that I needed the work, I needed the money, but I also just needed the opportunity. And if I could just do my best, then it'll be good. And, we made it, and it's a fun movie, it's ridiculous. It's I wrote it and I directed it, and it was, it's not my proudest work, but, there's something I like about it. Like, I definitely got in and found the thing I liked. It was very exploitative, just kind of like guns and orcs, But that actually, like everything, I try really hard to make sure that everything I do is a step forward, and so the next step is easy to take. That was kind of my first feature, and it was like, we shot. It was a fantasy epic that we shot in 15 days. It was just like a crucible. It was really, really hard, and it had a lot of VFX, and it had a lot of practical effects. It taught me a lot. It opened my eyes, kind of from this whole student film thing where I could be very, very particular, and like, who cares if I don't get the film finished for another year, and then suddenly being hired and like being under deadlines that were being put out, like they had pre-sold the film, so we had to finish it by a certain time, which like affected the quality of everything. And it was like a really good learning experience, and I mean, I'm very grateful that I had that opportunity to make it, but I kind of had to learn. That was like my big transition from like working as a student filmmaker to like being a professional where I can be hired, and and that's not to say that I wasn't like, like I will fight tooth and nail to make the film as good as I can. And if the producers aren't on board with that, then there can be problems. But I feel like that should be every director. Like, no director should be like, all right, And I actually learned that. Like, there was a couple of times when the producers would come in and say, like, we've decided this. And I'm like, all right, this is, you make your bed, you sleep in it. But then I learned that, like, as a director, no matter what happens, I'm always sleeping in that bed. Like, my name is the biggest name on that project, as, from behind the camera scene, And I just realized that, like, I felt like I might have made some concessions a little too easily, that affected the quality of the work. So, but it really kind of like, I got that done. It kind of like moved me to the next thing. The next thing I'd made the following year was a TV pilot that was locally produced. It was kind of a spec pilot, and this guy financed it, and it was his passion project. And so I was very, very much like, I was very much a hired gun to make that. But, you know, again, fought tooth and nail to make it as good as I could, because that's, like I said, like even if it's somebody else's passion project, it's my life that I'm putting into it. And so I needed to like have it actually count for something. I don't have the luxury of making a project that just disappears off the face of the earth and nobody sees it. You know, like I need to at least use it for my reel or something like that. And so that was made, and it just played late last year. It played at the International Television Festival in Vermont. I'm pretty sure it's in Vermont. I think it is. It was back east. It was very beautiful. And we all went out to that. But I didn't, unlike with Der Ostwind and the Promethean, which I was like submitting and promoting and all this stuff, I was kind of like, you know, the hired gun, and it's like, hey, do you want to come to this festival and help us? And I'm like, yeah, that'll be great. So, you know, I went out there for that. But and then just recently I got hired this last year through the Utah Film Commission. I got hired to do direct a feature that a company called Mar Vista made. They're out in LA, and they do their whole thing. They do like 30 of these type movies every year, and they hired a producer who was from here, and she wanted to come back out here and shoot. So she came out, and they contacted the Utah Film Commission, and they're like, you know, we need a director from Utah. And I was on the short list and ended up getting that job, and we made it, and it just got sold to Lifetime. It's airing June 4th, I think. But yeah, again, it wasn't, again, like Orc Wars, it wasn't something I would like go out of my way to seek out, but it was a lot of fun. I liked it a little bit better because I'm a big Hitchcock fan, and it was cool to be able to like do a thriller and like try to figure out like how to build suspense and all that stuff. But like I said, everything just has like, you know, I was like, I'm gonna do my best here because I need it to help me get closer to where I'm trying to go. So what I'm working on now is I've written a couple screenplays that I've sold that we're trying to find money for. And so one of them's is like a really kind of contained psychological thriller, kind of like in the vein of Open Water, where like people just get stuck and they're trying to deal in survival situations. Those kind of films you can make cheaper. So we're trying to, like, that's what I'm really trying to focus on, is getting that one made, because we don't need a huge budget to do it. But then I have another project that's actually a bigger budget, but that's the one we're just, I've kind of taken a step back, and you know, people haven't come and offered me a job. If they offered me a job, I'd like, hey, we want you to direct this feature. I'd be like, okay, let's do it. But I'm finding that like when I have these windows where I don't have something I'm doing, like they're really stressful financially, but I actually love them because I can work on my films, I can work on my projects and get things much further along, which I feel like in the long run will be more beneficial to me and my family than, you know, making Orc Wars or Stepsister. And both those, by the way, both those titles have been changed. Like when Orc Wars was released in the US, it was, it's titled Dragonfire now with a Y. It's on Netflix and Hulu. And then Stepsister, when it got sold to Lifetime, they changed it to You May Now Kill the Bride, which I think is probably maybe a better title. I don't know. But yeah, so I'm trying, like right now I'm trying my hardest to like kind of move out from being somebody that people hire to somebody that I can like generate my own content. But I also really love, I don't know, there's a niceness to having somebody hire you and they say, here's the script, and you say, I can interpret this however I want. Whereas if you write something and it's your own and it's your baby, then there's only one way that you can see it. And, you know, like there's a coolness to being a hired gun, a creative freedom that you don't always get when you're doing your own thing. And it's weird, but obviously I'd prefer to be coming up with my own projects and writing them and directing them and stuff like that. But